The Raiders find themselves in quite a predicament after their recent win dropped them to the 6th overall pick in the upcoming draft. Sure, a win feels good, but at 3-12, it might have cost them their shot at a franchise quarterback. So let's break down some realistic quarterback options outside the 2025 NFL Draft, because that's where we are right now. What's up, buddies? Welcome back. If you are new here, make sure you hit the subscribe button. We cover all AFC West news here on this channel. Now looking at the current situation, the Raiders have Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew under contract. O'Connell's sitting at a manageable $1.2 million, but Minshew's $14 million price tag? That's probably too steep for what he brings to the table. The good news is the Raiders are sitting pretty with about $108.3 million in cap space, second most in the league, plus 10 draft picks in their pocket. Now, from what I'm hearing, Tom Telesco and Mark Davis, with Brady's input, aren't exactly chomping at the bit to throw big money at a quarterback. Their philosophy seems to lean toward building a complete team first. But in the NFL, plans change faster than a defensive scheme, and we might see them pivot. Let's start with an interesting option that might raise some eyebrows: Dak Prescott. I know, hear me out. While I personally think he's one of the more overrated quarterbacks in the league, and his price tag would be astronomical, he's still a name worth discussing. The Cowboys' situation is getting interesting, and stranger things have happened in the NFL. The Raiders can't afford to repeat last year's strategy. Going into March without making any quarterback moves would leave them with two options: stick with O'Connell or draft a rookie who'd need to start immediately. Neither scenario is ideal for a team trying to turn things around. Sure, there's talk about Shedeur Sanders, and Dylan Gabriel's name has popped up as a potential day 3 pick, maybe even a reach in round 3. But here's the reality. The Raiders need a solid plan before the draft. Waiting and hoping isn't a strategy that's worked well for them historically. If you'd asked 100 Raiders fans last week about getting a veteran quarterback instead of drafting one, you probably would have gotten 100 no's. But sitting at number 6 overall changes things considerably. Sometimes circumstances force you to adapt, and that's exactly where the Raiders find themselves right now. Just look at the numbers: 2 quarterbacks under contract, significant cap space, multiple draft picks. The pieces are there for a major move. The question is, will the Raiders stick to their building through the draft philosophy, or will they make a splash in the veteran quarterback market? When we look at Dak Prescott's contract situation, there's an interesting angle here. It could be a one-year rental at $47.8 million for 2025, with zero guaranteed money from 2026 through 2028. Sure, he's got a no-trade clause just like Derek Carr had, meaning he can choose his destination. But let's be real, the Raiders might be an attractive option for him. Now, Prescott's had some solid numbers when surrounded by talent, but his playoff performance? That's where things get dicey. While he's definitely an upgrade over Aiden O'Connell, you have to ask yourself, is Dak at $60 million better than O'Connell at $1.2 million? That's the real question. Moving on to Kirk Cousins at number 5. And yes, I've got him ranked below Dak, even though he might be more attainable. The Falcons' situation is telling. When you're willing to eat $65 million in dead cap space, that raises some red flags. Sure, we've seen Russell Wilson bounce back, but this isn't the same situation. Cousins is 35, coming off an Achilles injury, and frankly looks diminished. If Cousins hits free agency, you're probably looking at a 2-year deal, around $40 million total, maybe $25 million per year if someone gets aggressive. But after watching him go 4-18 in Atlanta, that's not the kind of investment that makes sense. Sam Darnold at number 4 is interesting. His name keeps coming up in conversations, and there's a reason for that. He's having a career year in Minnesota with 32 touchdowns and 11 interceptions in one of the NFL's toughest divisions. The buzz around the Vikings suggests he's unlikely to return unless they win a Super Bowl, and Spotrac projects him around $32 million per year. The way Darnold's playing, he could even push that number up to $40 million annually. But here's the thing. If a quarterback's price tag starts creeping up that high, you've got to be absolutely certain they're your guy. These decisions can make or break a franchise for years to come. The wild card in all of this is that we're seeing these numbers: $47.8 million for Prescott, potentially $40 million for Darnold, in a market where good quarterback play is at a premium. It's going to come down to balancing immediate impact against long-term financial flexibility. Sam Darnold's situation mirrors Baker Mayfield's career resurgence, and if I'm Darnold's agent, I'm absolutely pushing for a bigger deal than Mayfield got. The numbers back it up: better stats than Baker's previous season, and with a playoff opportunity ahead. But here's the real question. Should the Raiders commit $40 million plus for Darnold? That's a massive gamble. Let's look at some other names in the mix. Russell Wilson? Signs point to Pittsburgh. Aaron Rodgers? At 42, even with the potential Devontae Adams reunion, that's not a path the Raiders should explore. Matthew Stafford's likely staying put with the Rams, and while Deshaun Watson's name keeps coming up, Especially after the Fred Biletnikoff situation and seeing Charles Snowden get playing time, it doesn't feel like a realistic option. Now, here's where things get interesting. J.J. McCarthy. Here's what you need to know. Both Tom Brady and Tom Telesco have had their eyes on McCarthy for a while. The situation could get complicated if Minnesota sticks with Darnold. They drafted McCarthy 10th overall last season, and if the Raiders win another game, which could honestly hurt them more than help, they might be stuck around pick 6 or 7. That creates a real dilemma. What if Shedeur Sanders is out of reach? What if Cam Ward isn't available? You're suddenly looking at a situation where you need a starter for the upcoming season, and your options are dwindling fast. The market dynamics here are fascinating. Remember how Mayfield reset his market value? Darnold could do the same thing, especially with these recent performances. For any team, including the Raiders, these decisions aren't just about talent. They're about long-term financial planning and roster construction. The reality is the Raiders are in a tricky spot. Win more games and you potentially lose out on top quarterback prospects. Stay put, and you might have more options, but in the NFL, you can't tank. It destroys team culture and player morale. That's why these alternative quarterback options are so important to consider. When you look at McCarthy's situation specifically, it represents a unique opportunity. He's got the Brady stamp of approval, which carries weight in the Raiders' front office. But timing and draft position could make this whole situation extremely complex. Could the Raiders make a bold move for J.J. McCarthy? There's solid reasoning why I rank him as more likely than Sam Darnold. Let's talk about Justin Fields at number 2. If the Raiders want to avoid breaking the bank, Fields makes a lot of sense. He's got connections in the building. Champ Kelly was part of the Chicago regime that drafted him. Plus, his early season performance in Pittsburgh showed real promise. When you look at how Fields struggled under Luke Getsy in Chicago and then see how Getsy's offense failed in Las Vegas, it makes you wonder. Every NFL decision-maker needs to reevaluate Fields because Getsy's play calling clearly didn't do him any favors. Getting a quarterback with Fields' athletic ability for under $10 million, that's worth exploring. Now, from what I'm hearing about Tom Brady's preferred offensive system, Fields might not be the perfect fit. But imagine pairing that athletic ability with Brady's mentorship. If it clicks, if Fields has a resurgence like Baker Mayfield or Sam Darnold, you're looking at potentially scary good potential. It's a gamble, but an intriguing one. Now, let's get to number 1, Aiden O'Connell. Here's the reality. The Raiders desperately want to draft a quarterback. They're willing to risk it all because they don't want another Jalen Daniels situation. They don't want to repeat last year's mistake of signing a Gardner Minshew-type quarterback for 25 times what they're paying O'Connell. But here's where it gets interesting. If they can't land their draft target, sticking with O'Connell at $1.2 million might be their fallback plan. He's not the long-term answer, but he could be a serviceable stopgap while they figure things out. Let me be crystal clear. If O'Connell starts in 2025, it's an organizational failure. How do you sell the NFL's most expensive tickets when you're competing in a division with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, Justin Herbert and Jim Harbaugh, Sean Payton and Russell Wilson? What quality head coaching candidate is going to sign up for that situation? The challenging part for O'Connell is the constant change. 4 different offensive coordinators, 2 head coaches, and likely more changes coming. He's never had consistency, which makes it hard to develop, but that's also not an excuse at this level. The brutal truth is, if the Raiders don't land their quarterback in the draft, O'Connell is the most likely starter by default. As Antonio Pierce said, they're trying to win football games regardless of how fans feel about it. But winning with O'Connell as your starter in the AFC West? That's a tough sell, both to the fanbase and to potential head coaching candidates. This is why the Raiders' quarterback situation is so critical. Whether it's through the draft or free agency, they need to make a significant move at the position. Rolling with O'Connell might save money, but in today's NFL, especially in that division, you need more than just a game manager. You need someone who can go toe-to-toe with the elite quarterbacks of the AFC West. That's a wrap on today's Raiders quarterback breakdown. Want to stay up to date with all the AFC action and in-depth analysis? Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. We're bringing you fresh NFL content every single day.